Hello, everybody. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. We are talking Egg Bowl today with the Daily Journal sports staff. Daily Journal sports editor John Pitts is with us. So is MSU beat writer Logan Lowery. John, I'm gonna give it to you, man. Let you take off.
Well, thanks. The last time that all three of us were together, I think circumstances nationally, as far as the perception of Ole Miss and State collectively, were somewhat different. But here is an Egg Bowl that even if both teams had not won a game, the stakes would be high. But the stakes appear to be very high here. And right off the top, let's just talk about what the stakes are for Ole Miss and State. It appears to me that a consensus is building that if Mississippi State can beat Ole Miss, that they've effectively punched a ticket into the national semifinals. I'm concerned that if Mississippi State is sitting out championship week where conference championships are taking place, that there's always some danger that whatever team is fifth might slip in there on the basis of a strong performance, or there is some upset that causes some chaos before that December 7th announcement. I'll start with you, Logan. What's your take on the stakes that we're talking about here, and what's the Mississippi State perspective on this game at Ole Miss?
I kind of agree with you, John. I think that Mississippi State is sitting fine right now, and if they do beat Ole Miss, they'll probably be sitting fine after that week. But once they get into that conference championship week, that's my concern with Mississippi State getting into that college football playoff. I think that the conference championship games could weigh heavily on how those first four teams rank out there, and I think that Mississippi State might get jumped at that point. Mississippi State did have a good resume earlier this year, 3 straight top 10 wins. Ole Miss has been a top 10 team at one time this year, still ranked in the top 25. So Mississippi State would have 4 wins over a top 25 team, and then would turn around and their only loss would be to the number 1 ranked team in the college football playoff, by 5 on the road. So they have out of the 1-loss teams, Mississippi State has the most impressive loss, if that is such a thing. But at the same time, I don't really know how heavily the conference championship weighs on the committee, and that's with this thing being in the first year, it's kind of tough to get a gauge on what they're looking for with this being the first kind of trial run. So I think everybody's just kind of interested to see where they sit. Mississippi State's taken the approach of they really don't know. They really can't control their own destiny. All they can control is what they do on the field. They've already lost to Alabama. There's nothing they can do about that. Now they just have to kind of win moving forward.
Parrish, before I throw it to you, let me just say I do get this sense that the College Football Playoff Committee is making it up a little bit as they go, that each week there seems to be some new nuance that's added to the mix of what they're talking about, as if perhaps around the table as they're meeting outside of Dallas, there are new elements that keep getting introduced, and knowing very well one of the committee members, Steve Weberg, the former USA Today writer, and knowing the reputation of some of the others, I suspect it's a pretty high-level conversation that takes place, and a lot of what-ifs and a lot of noodling around about things that go far beyond whatever metrics they may have in their hands. But Parrish, talk a little bit about both the general stakes of the game and what does this mean for Ole Miss? Because I have some thoughts about that, but I'd like to hear what you think about the stakes for an Ole Miss team that now, if you throw out Presbyterian, has lost 3 SEC games.
Yeah. Before we get there, John, I will say we have a viewer who asks what is the lowest price of an Egg Bowl ticket that she can come by, and I'm going to say what I say to sometimes to my wife and daughter and mother and the women in my life, and that is I don't know. So I haven't researched the lowest price Egg Bowl ticket, but I think it's still a tough ticket for this game. Stakes for Ole Miss, John. obviously not as high as they once were. And if Ole Miss loses this game, then all of a sudden you're looking at an 8-4 regular season. It's only one game better than last year's regular season, and that game is Presbyterian. So, back in August, we looked at this team. We probably thought 8 to 10 wins. Nobody thought a 7-0 start with beating Alabama, which was ranked number 1 in the coaches' poll at that time. Hugh Freeze has talked about journey. He's talked about journey since he was hired. He believes that this team is ahead of schedule, and in the big picture, maybe it is. In the big picture, I would say it. It is. It definitely is when you consider the train wreck that he inherited for the 2012 season. But journey changes sometimes. Journey changes along the way. The definition, the picture, what that looks like, and when this team was 7-0. You weren't looking at you were looking at a better finish. You weren't looking at losses to LSU, Auburn, and Arkansas. You figure you're going to maybe slip up along the way somewhere. And there have been injuries too that have played a part. I mean, you go back to that LSU game when Ole Miss only scored 1 touchdown and lost 10-7. And they had over 200 yards of offense against LSU in the first half. But they had very little after Laramie Tunsil left in the second half and didn't play most of that second half, the Rebels' left tackle. So, yeah, there have been some injuries along the way, and one to keep an eye on this week is Bo Wallace and his ankle sprain. But the stakes, John, the stakes are always there, because before you talk about yourself on the national picture, you really kind of have to, own your state, win your state. And that's something that the Rebels haven't done as much as MSU has done in this series the last few years.
Gosh, we get to talking about a 7-0 team that starts to underachieve, and I'm reminded a little bit about the Mississippi State season from a couple of years ago. But I said casually, and I think maybe also on Facebook before the Arkansas game, that I really wondered if we had seen the last Ole Miss victory this year already. That this felt like a team that was capable of losing at Arkansas, certainly capable of losing to Mississippi State. And then if you catch the wrong bowl opponent, you could lose yourself a bowl game, and all of a sudden this great start feels very different in terms of the arc of the progress that the program's made. But really and truly, what this does now is make Ole Miss an extraordinarily dangerous opponent for Mississippi State. Rivalry game. There's plenty of talent on the Ole Miss sidelines. They've got a week to try to scheme some things up. And I'm always remind myself, as Colin Cowherd says about the NFL, this is a week-to-week league. And so you can't assume too much about Mississippi State's shutout of Vanderbilt. Can't assume too much about Ole Miss's shutout loss at Arkansas. Those will not be the teams that are appearing in Oxford. This will be the way the pieces fit together will be different, and I think we're free to talk about the odds here, the betting lines as they've been set. The fact that what appears to be a superior Mississippi State team is only, maybe as we're talking here, like a 2-point favorite over an Ole Miss team that obviously gets the home field advantage consideration. I just think it is exceptionally scary rivalry moment for both of these. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Let's play a game that I like to do on here. And Logan, give me the name of a player that's not Dak Prescott or the usual suspects that you think might play a big role for Mississippi State in this game.
Well, I would probably go with a guy sort of like a Malcolm Johnson at tight end. He's a guy that kind of pops up for Mississippi State in different ball games. There's some games that you won't even know that he's on the field. He just, kind of does his thing in the blocking, in the trenches there. He doesn't catch a whole lot of passes. And then every once in a while he'll step up and have a big game and be, kind of on the verge of eclipsing 100 yards through the air. So, it really is, it's a matchup issue with Malcolm Johnson. He's sort of a tweener. He's kind of a big wide receiver, a little bit slow to play wide receiver. He was a high school wide receiver. Now he's a fifth-year senior at Mississippi State. He's played tight end the entire time. Has some big games, has some not so big games, and this could be one of those big games. So if you're looking for kind of a sleeper type player, I'll go with Malcolm Johnson.
Parrish, I'll throw that question to you, and I have to get up for just a second, but I will be right back. My wife's phone keeps ringing, and she needs to be alerted of that fact.
All right. Well, while you're away, John, I'll say that I think Quincy Adeboyejo from Ole Miss could be the wild card here. He could be a guy that steps up and has a very big game. He was kind of penciled in as the #1 slot receiver back in August, but really didn't win that job in camp. And in August, Hugh Freeze kept telling us he wanted somebody to step up and take hold of that position. He wanted to see more depth and production from his wide receivers. Adeboyejo never won that job. He's tall and he's fast. He's a 4-star recruit out of Dallas, now a sophomore, but he never won that job. Cody Core did. He stepped up and produced as a junior like we have not seen him produce in his first 2 years. But now without Laquan Treadwell, some roles have changed and have been redefined. Adeboyejo gets back in the starting lineup. Core moves out wide. Adeboyejo's in the slot, and he had a good game against Arkansas. Kind of the knock on him back in camp was he wasn't catching balls consistently. That's fairly significant for a wide receiver. That's all you're asked to do, or the biggest thing you're asked to do. But he hasn't really struggled with drops of late. He had one against Arkansas, but he also had a couple of really difficult catches when he was guarded closely, one of them on a slant, on a pass that was really behind him. So, he's begun to show his athleticism in a different role. It wouldn't surprise me to see him step up and have a really big game in the Egg Bowl.
Let's go on to something else here. I know both camps can be a little quiet, a little oblique about the injury issues, to make a small pun there perhaps. So let's start with you, Parrish. As you have watched this team the last couple of games, do you think there's anybody who's hurt or beat up or just underperforming at this point, perhaps from injuries that aren't being widely discussed, who you're scratching your head, maybe they look better in September than they do now? You kind of wonder what kind of shape a guy is in, but nobody's necessarily acknowledging an injury at this point?
Yeah, I don't know that there are any of those. We have a good idea of who has the injuries at Ole Miss. It's just not a good idea of what the specifics of those are. We know that Laramie Tunsil has struggled with the shoulder and the right biceps since that LSU game. They're pretty much they're a different offense when he's not there. Hugh Freeze told us earlier in the week that everyone who played against Arkansas would, quote, give it a go this week, would give it a real tough go, I think were his words there. Tunsil started out against Arkansas, then his shoulder popped out, and he didn't play much in the second half. They're expecting him to be ready to play. That's a big advantage for Ole Miss if he is. But the big injury to watch here is going to be Wallace's ankle. And all we've heard from Freeze is that, you'd have to chain him down to keep him out of this game. He really wants to play in this game. That's fine. But, Hugh Freeze is not going to play him in the game if he's not ready physically. If it's going to be a long-term detriment to Bo Wallace to play, Hugh Freeze would put the chains on him and set him down. Now, what we've heard is that Wallace should be ready to go. We don't know anything really about what his week of practice has been like. We know he's been limited. Does that mean, that might mean he's not practiced at all? We also know earlier in the week that Freeze said he was going to get reps and prepare his backup quarterbacks. That there are two of them because neither has elevated themselves ahead of the other. That's Ryan Buchanan, the pocket passer, and Devontae Kincaid, the running quarterback. Wallace is going to give this team its best chance to win, assuming he can escape the pressure that is coming because Ole Miss hasn't been very good collectively along the offensive line. But he's been able to do that. He's been able to buy time in the pocket. And if he can do that, if he has the escapability, and if he can plant on that right foot and get off some passes, I think you'll be able to find, some holes in the MSU secondary. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see Devontae Kincaid have a certain package installed for him in this game to kind of spark a running game that's been stagnant most of the time against SEC opponents, and just to give MSU a look that Ole Miss hasn't given to anyone else this year.
Logan, I know this is especially an issue at Starkville that Dan likes to be very coy about injuries, but I'll throw the same question to you. Do you have the sense there's anybody out there that's underperforming at this point, perhaps for an injury that's not necessarily being disclosed?
Well, you're right. Dan Mullen does not like to talk about injuries whatsoever. But the two leading wide receivers, Jamion Lewis had the cracked fibula that kept him out for three of the last 5 or 6 games now. Anyway, he's been hampered the whole year by that. He injured that against LSU and just hasn't been the same type of player since. He's tried to battle through it, with being a senior and trying to, play out his time here at Mississippi State. Also, De'Runnya Wilson, he missed last week. Dan Mullen said he was cleared to play in that game, but they held him out, just to try to rest him. And I could see, I saw him actually leave the field with about a minute or so to go against Alabama. He just was limping, and Dan Mullen wouldn't talk about what the injury actually was, but De'Runnya Wilson was pretty beat up going into that game. And I don't know if a week or two of rest is going to help him. We'll find out on Saturday. But those are two things to look out for on the offensive side of the ball. And then on defense, they haven't talked about it. Neither one of the guys have, but both cornerbacks, Tevez Calhoun and Jamerson Love, have been beat up all year. Neither one of them has an interception on the entire season. And they just don't look like the same players that they were a year ago. Both of them had an exciting finish to the 2013 season, and both look like they were playing good ball. And Jamerson Love has played good ball this year, and Tevez Calhoun has at times. But neither one of them have had that big play capability, and I just think that they're just beat up at this point in the season. I know Ole Miss is going to try to air it out, so it may be an occasion for both of those players to have a big game this week. But we'll have to see. But I know they'll be tested early and often.
I want to save the Egg Bowl prediction business for the very end, so we've got a few minutes to cover some other territory. Let me get from both of you your best guesses about where you think your respective teams will be playing in bowl season. At one point, it looked like both of these teams might be playing on January 1st. I have seen bowl projections all over the place. It's difficult to imagine that both these teams would be playing in the Big Six games at this point, but there are surprises out there. Logan, I'll start with you. Where do you feel like Mississippi State will be playing when bowl season arrives?
I think I'll be heading to South Florida, and I'm not unhappy about that. South Florida in January is pretty nice. I think Mississippi State will probably be headed to the the Orange Bowl. I'm getting my bowls confused here at this point. But yeah, Orange Bowl is probably where they'll head, down in Miami. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I've seen the projections. Of course, they still could get into the Sugar Bowl against Alabama in the playoff. I saw even something crazy this morning that Mississippi State was going to play in the Peach Bowl. And I really don't think that they'll drop that far. But right now I'm expecting Miami this time.
So your gut feeling then is that Mississippi State, when it's all said and done on December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, by the way, that Mississippi State's not going to make that playoff bracket?
I don't think so. I think they get jumped at that point. I just that's what I think.
I'm concerned about that. I just that quiet week where they have to sit and watch everybody else try to take a run at them is going to be a most extraordinarily uncomfortable situation for the Mississippi State nation, if I can throw that one out there. Parrish, how about you? You're the travel ninja that we have, and good about making travel plans. Where do you feel like you're going to be going?
Well, earlier the bowl projections were higher. Before the Arkansas game, I saw Ole Miss projected in the Orange Bowl, and now I've seen a Peach Bowl projection. Frankly, if they don't win, they'll be an 8-4 team. I don't know if that will be enough to get them back in the Cotton Bowl. You would hope that they could improve their bowl standing from last year with the Music City Bowl, that they could rise up just a little bit. You'd like to feel good about a season in which you did have some really good accomplishments, a win over Alabama. We talk about that 7-0 start. There was some quality football there. They hadn't been as much of it during the last 4 games, but they've accomplished quite a bit and have a good chance, I think, to accomplish more against Mississippi State. Bowl games, I don't know, John. I have no idea. I'm preferable. I really would like to see them in Atlanta or Dallas because those are indoor games, or can be in Dallas. If weather is a problem, and stadiums are great and easy to get to. I've had the Cotton Bowl experience quite a bit, but I'll tell you what, that's not an experience that you have to encourage me to repeat. They really do it right over there on all levels for coaches and players and support staff, but also for the media. So, they could end up a number of places. I've also seen them mentioned in discussions about the Gator Bowl. So, there's a lot on the table.
Parrish, I'll ask you the same question I asked Logan, or the thing we talked about with Logan. Do you think Mississippi State, if they beat Ole Miss, gets in the 14 playoff, or do you think they may get nudged at the end?
Look, my thought is this is still a human-led process, okay? Archie Manning is no longer on the committee. I understand that there is no bias and everybody's trying to get the 4 teams, and that's the company line. But look, you have representatives of different regions of the country, of different conferences, different people on that committee with affiliations to different schools. I mean, you have that kind of makeup because everybody is kind of arguing for their region with hopes of coming up with what's right for everybody. But that being said, when you have human beings involved in the process, you also have imperfection, and because we think the SEC, in particular the SEC West, is the strongest division in college football, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the popular belief among everybody on the committee, because figuring that out is kind of a moving target. It's kind of a gray area there. So I just think when you have that type of discussion, and you have passions that are spread out all over the country, I think the idea that it's a given that 2 SEC teams are going to occupy 4 spots, when the committee has already said they'll lean heavily on conference champions, I'd be nervous to be in that 4th spot and not be playing in a conference championship game.
We've got about 6 minutes or so left, so let's get down to it here. And Logan, I'll start with you. Let me say that I personally feel like Mississippi State will win this Egg Bowl game, but as our old friend Robbie Robertson likes to say, and he'd say it just about like this, man, it's hard to win on the road in the SEC, because it's hard to win on the road in the SEC. That's a real thing. But Logan, starting with you, how do you see this game playing out? Got a rough idea about a score that you'd like to predict, and what do you think will be the big key to the game? And then we'll throw it over to Parrish.
Well, all season I've contended that Ole Miss was going to win this game up until this past weekend. I got a chance to watch Ole Miss in Arkansas. They actually played it on the Jumbotron there at Mississippi State. And I didn't like what I saw from Ole Miss. I thought that they didn't look like the same team that I've been watching throughout the year. And I think if Mississippi State can go out, put some points up early, that Ole Miss just might lay down. As bad as that sounds, that's what it looked like to me, that type of effort was being played out there in Fayetteville last week. So I think it's going to be important for Mississippi State to go out on the road. I do think it'll be a hostile environment. It always is in the Egg Bowl. And if Mississippi State can go out there and put some points up and create that little bit of doubt in Ole Miss's mind. They made us turn over in that game. But I think if Ole Miss comes out, puts some points up early in that game, that we're going to be down for a bitter fight right to the very end, like it was last year. So I can see one of two outcomes, in this game. I think Mississippi State could run away with it, or I can see an Ole Miss team winning a close one right there at the very end. But I don't see Ole Miss running away with it, and then I don't see Mississippi State winning a close game.
Interesting. Parrish, how about your take on who wins and how does the game play out from your perspective?
I think Logan is right in that a fast start for Ole Miss is really important. I don't think the Rebels would lay down. I don't think they would quit, and I really didn't see that at Arkansas as much as I just saw mistakes compounding mistakes, and then a couple of redshirt freshman quarterbacks in the game who kind of had the deer in the headlights look. And, the bottom line is I've seen Ole Miss prepared for just about every game that Hugh Freeze has coached, but that was not one of them. They were not prepared when they got on the field. And that's kind of been the buzzword this week coming out of Oxford. It's kind of been batten down the hatches week. Very few players have been made available for interviews, and just about every one of the, I guess, four who have come out have used the word preparation multiple times in whatever answers to questions they've been giving. So preparation has kind of been the buzzword. I think there'll be a lot of focus. I think being at home does help. You look back since 2000, the home team is 12-2. The two home teams that lost were bad teams. That was Ole Miss in 2010 and Mississippi State in 2003. Those were not good teams. I think that'll help Ole Miss a little bit. When I'm trying to make a prediction in this game, typically I have not given enough consideration to the emotional factor. And I do think that swings to Ole Miss this year. Typically it goes to the team that lost the previous year. I think Ole Miss is embarrassed by how it played last year, how it lost at the end. I think there are a lot of emotions in play for Ole Miss trying to distance itself from not only that Egg Bowl last year, but the Arkansas game last week. And as Logan mentioned, he didn't like what he saw against Arkansas. And right, college football, I think, John, you said Colin Cowherd called it the week-to-week game. It really, you really can decide how you feel about yourself based on last week's game. And if Ole Miss does that, it'll be in for a long night. I really think that looking more at the body of work for this team in this season, that there are some matchups that will favor Ole Miss in this game, and we've talked about it a little bit. It's Bo Wallace in the passing game. He's got to get some protection. He's got to be elusive. He's got to be able to plant on that right foot and throw and find holes in the MSU secondary. I think he can do that. I don't expect the Rebels to crank up a running game unless it's with something different, maybe a Devontae Kincaid package. If there's something like that to spark the running game, look, Hugh Freeze isn't beyond tinkering with his run game even this late in the season, because you guys remember Robert Kondichi in the backfield last year. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a look that we've not seen from that team to kind of get the running game going. But I think, as the game goes on, they're going to struggle to do that against State's front seven. I think emotions play for Ole Miss here. I think if they can protect the football, and I think they will in this game, I think they'll win a close one. I'll say 22-21, just because I like odd scores.
We've got about 1 minute, so I'm going to throw one last whip around out here for a quick response. Do either of you think Auburn has any chance of beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl? Because if State wins, they're going to be watching to see what happens in the Iron Bowl, because that's an Auburn victory, I believe, would be the ticket to Atlanta. So do either one of you see a scenario in which Auburn can win the game against Alabama? Parrish, quickly.
I'm going to say no for the same reasons I like Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl. The emotion factor, one, I think Alabama's a better team. The emotion factor swings to them. They're at home, and they look at how that game ended last year, and they feel like they let one get away at Auburn.
Logan, I'll throw it to you. Same question.
The only way Auburn wins that game is if Bryant-Denny Stadium burns to the ground and they have to play in Auburn. I just think the home field advantage is going to be too much for Auburn. They haven't looked good the last few weeks. And Alabama definitely has. Alabama's clicking on all cylinders right now. I don't think Auburn has a chance.
Well, let that be the last word, fellas. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We get to have a Thanksgiving since the big game isn't until Saturday. I know fans can be of two minds about that, and it won't surprise me the national interest in this game that we don't wind up playing on Thanksgiving again at some point, but not this year. So you guys have a great day, and thank everyone for watching.